Well, South Africa went to the polls on May the 29th in what was a historic general election, one that saw the African National Congress lose its majority vote for the very first time in decades. In the aftermath of the elections, after much deliberation and negotiation, a government of national unity was then formed. This coalition includes the ANC, the Democratic Alliance, Inkatha Freedom Party, the Good Party, the Patriotic Alliance, the Pan-Africanist Congress, the Freedom Front Plus, the Democratic Movement, Rise Mzansi and Al-Jama. Now, despite this broad-based alliance, the GNU has faced significant challenges with growing differences over policy as well as leadership. And while some see this as a new dawn for democracy and power sharing, others have expressed concerns about the coalition's stability and its ability to govern effectively, leading to rising public distrust. We will explore the complexities of the government of national unity, the obstacles it faces, and of course, what its future holds for South Africa's political landscape. And for this discussion, let's welcome governance expert Professor Mazwe Majola, as well as Chair of Social Security Systems Administration and Management Studies at the University of the Witwatersrand, Professor Alex van den Heever. Gentlemen, great having you with us this afternoon. Welcome. Happy festive season.
Thank you.
Hi. So, gentlemen, I want to hear from both of you. Let's get your overall assessment of this GNU from its inception until now. Professor Majola, we'll start with you.
Well, as expected, it hasn't been a smooth riding, and we all expected that when this government was put together, because we've got different opposing different political organizations coming together with different background, policies, leadership styles, cultures, traditions, values. So, as we've always been saying, it's a forced marriage. Mm-hmm. But with all fairness, they've tried to make it work. Of course, as there are, you can see differences, more especially when it comes to policies, you know. In the main, we've seen the Bill Act differences there, the NHI differences there, the foreign affairs differences there, more especially between the two largest parties, the ANC and the DA. That was expected. Of course, what is important, it's a high level of dispassionate and mature leadership from all parties. It behooves all of them to make it work. They have to make it work, you know, and I hope that it will work for the next 5 years, for the sake of the country, for the stability of the country, because we need a stable government to work. So I think they've tried their utmost best. But as I'm saying that, you do see those cracks now and then, more especially in the areas of policies.
Mm-hmm. Professor van den Heever, I mean, this has been a serious topic between you and I, even before this government was actually formed, because we were just looking at the discrepancies in terms of policy and wondering how these people were going to come together at such short notice and govern the country for everybody's interests. What has been your views?
Well, I think first we have to accept that we're in the world of coalition government for the rest of our lives.
True.
And so this is really the first period. It's not the equivalent of the government of national unity in the 1994 transition. It's effectively the first step in a coalition government world. And so we're seeing basically how parties will work together. The difficulties with it, though, are that the ANC itself is not a cohesive party. And the divisions within the ANC are not necessarily, they appear to be about policy, but a large part of it is about basically corruption. And there are large parts of the ANC with their fingers in the till, and there are parts of the ANC who want to clean up. And they are at tension with each other. And so it's part of that tug of war that we're seeing that's also attempting to kind of put a spanner in the works of the government of national unity, so-called. Because if the DA walks away, essentially we will probably see a change of president. And we will see...
That's what the DA has been communicating.
And it would be extremely dangerous for the country, and it'll be a coalition with EFF and MK, and that will be the government. It'll still be a coalition government, but it'll be with a part of the ANC and these other parties. So the question really is, what's the direction that we're going to take? I think it's incredibly important that the current coalition and government of national unity holds. But it means that Ramaphosa has to also manage a very, very difficult coalition in the ANC that keeps him in the presidency. And that's the tension going forward, and that really impacts on the stability down the line of the government of national unity.
So this arrangement that we're calling the government of national unity, Professor Alex, do you think, are you starting to see public acceptance of this arrangement, or what do you think?
I think in general nobody has a huge problem with it. I think the people who have a huge problem with it are certain political parties, because it clearly works against their interests. And the difficulty we have is that government needs to be cleaned up.
And are we sure these are all the parties that are in the opposition, not necessarily those that are still part of the GNU?
Some would be part of the GNU, and some are outside. And I think that the danger for many of them is that if there were, let's say, a clean-up of government, a lot of people go to jail. A lot of people start losing money because they stop being able to exploit the weaknesses in governance in the public sector that they are exploiting at the moment. And that's the tension, because it's vested interests in that patronage that is actually causing what appears to be a political split, but it's very often reflected as if it's an ideological difference, but it's not. It's basically a real problematic weakness in the way in which government has been operated that needs to change if South Africa is to grow. And I think that Ramaphosa has been trying to keep that together so that we can actually move into a world where we can get infrastructure back in play, we can get economic growth back, we can start to impact on unemployment and poverty directly and improve government revenues. But we are not going to do that keeping thieves in charge of government.
Very interesting views there, Professor Alex. Professor Majola, let's expand further now and look at what has actually worked. I mean, social security issues have drastically come to sharp focus. We're seeing more arrests. There's suddenly a new level of intelligence for the policemen of this country who are able to foil even robberies and CITs before they actually happen. So there has been some good and positive direction within this GNU. What has worked for you?
Well, there's been a lot of positivity and optimism, stability. And I like the passion that you have from different ministers and departments, especially the new ministers. They are bringing more passion into the leadership, and they're bringing more styles.
So you're seeing more cohesion amongst the political leaders?
Well, yeah, they've uncovered certain things that have been concealed before in certain departments. And this makes those who have been there before to lift up, and you can see that. So there's a healthy competition, between departments and between ministers. I would like to comment, though, I think whenever we talk about this thing, the stakeholder that we normally miss, that we don't talk about, that has made this to hold, and we still have very big power, whether to make it break or to hold. I would like to commend the civil servants, especially the senior civil servants at a level of DGs, DDGs, because especially those who have been there, the way they've welcomed the new ministers. I haven't seen or witnessed any tensions between a new minister and a certain DG. So there's been a high level of maturity from the senior managers there, or leaders there, the DGs. So I think really we must commend them, because these are people who are making things happen. You know, ministers are political heads, but the people who are running the departments are DGs, and obviously those who are reporting to them, your DDGs, your chief directors, you know. So, I mean, you've seen it was difficult the way it was happened, because remember that most of them, they came from a certain political party.
So you don't think any of them went rogue during this particular time?
Well,
Professor?
Probably some of them may not have liked it, but as I'm saying, they made it work. They've welcomed it. And this is what we want to see, that democracy in South Africa, ensuring that the people who are working there, it must not like they're deployed by a certain party and they are working for a particular party. They've got to be able to say, we are civil servants of the country. Whoever takes over, we will support and we will work for the benefit of the country. So I think that has been a positive move. As I'm saying that, also the whole stability and optimism, the passion, the positivity. The risk, though, which I see in the danger, is the weakening of the power of opposition, the power of opposition, you know. Because now, these parties who are within the GNU, it's a matter of how to become a collaborative competitor. In other words, we've got to work together, but at the same time, I've got to tell you when we are wrong, you know.
Yes.
So they've got to
hold each other accountable.
To find that they won't be accountable. We've got to find that, because if you look at it really, yes, DA has been vocal, but other parties, it seems like they've been, they've gone under, which is very unfortunate, because they had some ideologies before, PAC, IFP, and Freedom Front. So we'd like to see them while they're in government, because of course they're in government, they've got to govern the country, but how they do that, while they also become vocal about their own policies for the sake of their own constituencies.
You know, that's exactly the point that I wanted to make as a follow-up to that. So maybe Professor Alex, you can come in there. I mean, Professor Majola seems to think there's a good synergy, a good enough synergy amongst the ministers and the department heads and so forth, but we are getting a sense like the smaller parties are there just for proxy, and their views and their points are basically just, you know, being left aside, not being taken into account at high policy making levels. So what is your view in this? And what is the potential impact, as Professor Majola is saying or suggesting, that this could have, where those smaller parties don't actually feel they are actually represented, even though they are part of government?
So I think it'll vary. So first of all, I think what is very positive is that there hasn't been a sort of sweeping in of ministers who've just removed their heads of department, as would have happened with the factional change within the ANC. So unusually under the ANC, that would be the practice, is that and that creates massive instability in departments. And we haven't seen that. And it means that the handovers appear to have been very productive, which means that people have actually briefed the ministers in detail, and they've got up to speed and gone on with the job. And in many cases, they've implemented frameworks that have already been passed, legislation, and they've immediately acted on those. So that's very positive on that side. In terms of smaller parties, remember that the Government of National Unity wasn't only about who came into the executive. It was also about portfolio committee heads.
Yes.
And we haven't seen that come to fruition yet. They're going to exercise. A head of a portfolio committee can essentially hold government, the executive, to account in very fundamental ways. They can call people in, they can hold departments to account, and they're effectively not pushed around by the majority within the portfolio committee.
Yes.
So they've got a lot of initiative that they will take forward, and we will see that happening going forward. The other issue is that between the executive and the legislature, we are seeing opposition in that provincial structures themselves don't have to go along with national government. and they will speak out on their issues at a provincial level. We've seen in Gauteng, the ANC in Gauteng did not follow National ANC, and they're effectively part of an opposition. That opposition I was talking about within the ANC itself, they reflect a competing faction, and they have effectively allied themselves with MK and EFF to stay in power, not to put them in the executive, but to agree with them to pass their budgets, etc., because they don't have anywhere close to a majority in the legislature. So that was another way in which they could indirectly stay in power. Now that's put them at loggerheads with both the National ANC, and it's also put them at loggerheads with essentially reform, and we're sitting with effectively real problems in Gauteng as a consequence, and we'll have to see how that plays out. But it means that the DA and the other parties within the province are obviously going to speak out in opposition.
And Tshwane as well, don't forget, Professor.
But also in KZN and other areas, and also in Eastern Cape and Free State, where there are deep problems. Yes. And so we will still see these opposition voices coming out. And we will see it in national parliament as well. We also don't have a majority ANC in national parliament, which means when the Division of Revenue Act gets put forward next year, the question is what policies are implied in that Division of Revenue Act, and how are the parties going to respond? This is the first time we will have a legislature that will look at money bills without a majority party in position, which means you have to negotiate. And the issue is that you don't have to bludgeon your way through at the executive level. You now have to make sure that you've done a deal with your partners in order to get the legislature to back you. Go against them, you might have some sort of agreement at the executive level, but you'll be overturned at the legislature level, and that's entirely legitimate in terms of the way our parliamentary and government structure is organized.
And we saw the confusion around how that question would then be addressed, Professor, in terms where the ANC or the rest of the GNU partners do not agree or come to a stalemate. So that has on its own actually caused a lot of confusion as to how the GNU would actually resolve a situation where its own partners are not agreeing on a certain policy.
They have to negotiate. And so this is where coalition politics going forward is actually extremely healthy for South Africa, because we're moving away from majoritarian policy making toward one where you actually have to negotiate, where you have to trade off and make concessions. You can't go forward on the assumption that, well, you know, we're the dominant partner and therefore we can just do what the hell we like, as we could when we were a majority party. They are not a majority.
The rhetoric, Professor Majola, this has been some of the rhetoric that we're hearing from the leaders of the different parties. It still feels as if they feel that they're working in silos, because this one will say we're very adamant on our foreign policy. The DA will not dictate our foreign policy. It's actually dictated by a unified decision. But that's not what we're getting as being adequately communicated to the citizens of this country.
Oh yes, that's why I was really saying that we need a very measured leadership here.
In what form,
they must just drop compromise. You are not a majority, we are working together. Therefore, let's compromise, let's find each other. Let's put the national interest ahead of our self-interest, and even ahead of our own party's interest. And that's not easy, because remember that I always said that these people, they have three interests within them. The self-interest is about I, me, myself.
All right.
It's about party interest. I represent a certain party, therefore I need to represent the policies and the interests of that party. But also they've got a national interest, the country's interest. So that's why you need this maturity and matured leadership to take place. But also the president must really stand up and prove that he's the one in charge. He's the one who appoints, and he's the one who fires leadership, or rather the ministers that he appoints.
Gentlemen, unfortunately we're out of time. Professors, thank you so much for your input this afternoon. Professor Mazwe Majola, the governance expert, and Professor Alex van den Heever, as we look at how the GNU has fared since coming into power.